There's a line on page 20 that I really like, but I'm not totally sure I understand what it means. And the line is, a child star actress is a double-edged dildo. How is that true? Like, how is that true? I accept that it is true, but how is that exactly? Oh, don't forget your mic.
God, I thought that was a dildo. Right. It's like, what's happening? Getting one dildo and then there's another dildo. It's a double-edged dildo.
That would be a really amazing moment of prop interviewing.
Hi, Ira.
Hi.
What that line means exactly? I think it just means that you... Are you asking me that seriously?
I am actually asking you that because it does seem true, and it seems like an amazing...
Yeah, no, I think that there are really, in any industry that exploits women, there's, well, not any, but there's positives and negatives to it. A dildo can feel really good, right? Right?
Yes. Oh, double-edged means like a double-edged razor? Because I thought double-edged meant like... Not to get too minute with this
we can get
line of questioning, but why not?
The phallic
with a head
idea,
on head on either end of it is what I pictured.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but it can feel like you are objectified, or it can feel really great, depending on who's giving or receiving.
That's what I wanted to know. I thought
Hi,
maybe
welcome to the Strand.
Another
I'm Ira Glass.
I also thought it might have something... Anyway, okay.
No, please.
Well, the next line in the whole thing is nobody should have to look back to see the future ahead of them. And I thought the fact that the dildo has two ends on it referred to... I don't know.
To looking back?
Yeah, to looking back.
Fuck, that is far more genius than the poem is.
Okay.
That makes a lot of sense to me, actually.
Okay, thank you. So I understand that the book started, or the first poem that you wrote was the poem about Brittany Murphy, and she died in 2009, and you wrote a poem about her, and then friends are just like, this should be your next book. And I've also read that you didn't actually know her, and I'm wondering, like why did that hit you so hard? Is it because you just felt bad for her, or when it happened, did you immediately see, like, oh, like, I can kind of guess her deal?
That's a great question. I didn't know her. The only interaction, and I've said this publicly, that I ever had with her, we were always on the same, like when we did auditions, she and I always went in for the same things at a certain point for years, for at least like 3 years. So anytime I went to sign my name into something, like the sign-in sheet, I would see her name. I'm sure she saw mine many times. It just, at a certain point, when you see someone coming up, you see their name a lot on a sign-in sheet for auditions. It's very, very common.
Wait, and what was the type that both of you were? Is it like very tough, but very like vulnerable at the same time, of a certain age? Is that a niche?
Well, it really depended. It really depended because also there's sometimes you look at a list and I'm like, oh my God, this person's perfect for this. And then it kind of can create a sense of nervousness, or like, oh shit, I know I'm not right for this. Like I have to work extra hard to prove why I think I'm right for this. So I don't know. I mean, it was across the board. The movie that I remember, the only time I ever really saw her in person was we both went in for the film 8 Mile. And I knew I was too young for that. And she seemed like she had the sort of attitude and the toughness while still being this incredible beauty. And I remember that they called... the door opened, the audition door room opened, and she came out and they called my name, which is how they do it. They're like, bye, Brittany. And then they look at the thing and they're like, oh, Amber, hi. And usually it's very common. And I walked by her and we smiled at each other. That's the only interaction I ever had with her.
So when she died, like, what was the thing that made you want to write the poem?
The thing that was interesting, I think for me, was that it was the first peer of mine that died, that was my age. Nobody else in the book was my contemporary. So I didn't know them. I didn't know them personally. I wasn't around them personally. And that was just sort of the tiny linchpin. That's all it was. The actual bomb itself, I think, was once I started to explore her life and the truth of her life, which was that she was someone who was interested in acting since she was incredibly young and convinced her mom to let her move to Los Angeles to become an actress. I mean, it was like a lifelong dream for her. And then came to Los Angeles, worked really hard to make it, made it, found the inevitable, downside of that, which is, you become a huge star for a moment, and then suddenly your worth becomes, whatever, and she didn't really make it out of that. She never really made it. She started to do these sort of rom-coms and wasn't able to sort of find her way out of that. And you could see it. I mean, she was very skinny. Things were happening that no one was really addressing. And my experience was literally 100% the opposite of that experience. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. I was not only a third generation Angelean that was born in Los Angeles, but my grandfather was in vaudeville. My father is an actor.
Your dad did like
West Side Story and Twin Peaks and a whole bunch of stuff. And my falling into acting was completely accidental and not necessarily by choice. It was a huge accident that just paid off. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it kind of was a weird, I felt like I was looking at somebody that was very different from me, but also very much the same.
Did you feel like she got in trouble that you would never get in trouble? You she fell into a hole that you could never fall in because your family, it's the family business. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like you're like, you know what I mean? You're born into it in a certain way.
I don't think that necessarily even like at this point, nepotism doesn't mean shit because like raise your hand if you know who my father is. Okay, that's less than half the room. So
I just mean that like the notion, not that the world would help you get a job,
right,
but that once you had a job, it wouldn't be like a crazy novelty. You wouldn't be I didn't know any actors growing up. Do you know what I mean? I didn't know anybody who was in radio.
So
I didn't know anybody who had a creative job.
Right.
Like if like the most interesting job around when I was a kid was like teachers or doctors or something. And so imagining what it would be to do a job where I would be writing or anything like I didn't know anybody. Whereas like for you, it was kind of like a familiar thing. Like it wouldn't be like you could imagine, like once you started acting, you sort of like you wouldn't be like somebody, you wouldn't be naive going into it.
Right. No, that's true. I never knew my grandfather. He died before I was alive. What I did know, though, was not my father's star career. I knew his pain from, the years way past when he was a star, way past the point, he was a huge star in the 50s and 60s, and then he dropped out for like 20 years to pursue art and, the semiculture movement in Topanga Canyon and grew up around all of that life. And then he tried to get back into acting and spent close to 30 years being wholeheartedly rejected. So I grew up around my father's rejection, which is really interesting. I never saw my dad feel like a success. I don't know that part of people who identify with him in that way.
So in a way, you'd be prepared for like part of the worst of it.
100%, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you saw her, and like her life is completely the opposite of yours. Why don't you read the piece? It's on page 28.
Yeah. Brittany Murphy. Her body dies like a spider's. In the shower, the blooming flower seeds a cemetery. A pill lodges in the inner pocket of her flesh coat. Her breasts were the gifts of ghosts, dark tarps of success. Her mouth dribbles over onto the bathroom floor, Pollock blood. The body is lifted from the red carpet, put in a black bag, taken to the mother's screams for identification. The country says good things about the body. They print the best photos, the least bones, the most peach. Candles are lit in the glint of every glam. Every magazine stand does the Southern Belle curtsy in her post-box office bomb honor. The autopsy finds an easy answer. They say good things about the body. How bold her eyes were. Bigger than Hepburn's. The way she could turn into her camera close-up like life depended on her.
Is that like a real thing in the coverage that afterwards they talked about in the coverage when she died? Like, oh, she's so pretty. She was so pretty.
Yeah, they do that with everybody. I mean, that's the reality of it. Yeah, I mean, it was specifically it was a catalyst for the poem. Was seeing her on the cover of, and I never read, and not because I try to avoid them. I actually just don't give a shit. I read like Scientific American, but it was like Us Weekly or something. I remember seeing it, walking by somewhere at some point, and it was like this close-up photo of her from something. It was really beautiful, and you could see like she had the longest eyelashes I'd ever seen, and it was one of those titles. It was like, died too young, and in part of my research of it, I found other covers where they're like, celebrities on vacation, what their real bodies look like, and I, in the pages of that, it was like her showing her ribs and showing how skinny she was and talking about how sort of deformed she looked. And this was during a period in which she couldn't get work, like she really couldn't. And this is a girl that was like 33 years old. But she'd gotten so skinny, and for whatever reason, whatever was going on in her personal life, whatever was, literally eating her alive, they had no problem expressing that without actually talking about what might have been really going on, or even just, I don't know. It's so, I know those magazines are strictly salacious, but it's hard to be someone who's empathetic for a living and not feel that,
And so when you first became interested in her, it was like, okay, so this is like one of us. Oh my God, one of my peers like is dead, and like poor honey, right? And then, but were there things in the coverage that you related to, like that you just felt like, oh yeah, that could be me, like, oh, I could see myself, like, or was it not at that point?
You mean that cover that I saw of her?
The coverage, just like once you started reading up on her and seeing how she was treated and just seeing what she had become. Like, did you relate to it, or did it seem
what I related to was after I saw that magazine article and I started to fall down, I describe it as like Alice going down like a 5,000-mile rabbit hole, right? Which is every poem in this book, where I would start researching one thing and it would lead to the next thing, and then that would lead to the next thing, which inevitably would make me think about myself, because I'm an actress and I'm self-centered and narcissism is real, and you keep going down the hole until you are totally identifying with this person and their reality, which may or may not necessarily be true, as I realized and as I found out. But I remember seeing this coverage of her and on CNN and all this stuff, and then ultimately it was reading the autopsy and her death certificate, which I read for all of them, which was really fascinating for me, was learning about the actual literal death. And actually in her autopsy, they talked about that she was found in the shower, and she was found sort of crumpled over with her knees up and her head down between her legs and her arms folded over. And it made me think of what a spider looks like when it dies.
Yeah.
And that's where that first line came from.
One of the things that's actually so powerful in the book is just the sheer volume of women that you document. And can I ask you to just read like a page, start on page like 102 or 103, and just like there's like 11 or 12 pages of just you going search this, search that, search this, and just like read a page of the names.
I'll read until we get to the names. Do you want me to do that?
No, start at the names. Start at the names.
All right.
And do like a page.
Really?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like it's amazing by itself.
You don't want me to start at the beginning of the search?
If you're the author, if you prefer to start at the beginning of the search, start at the beginning of the search.
Shit, now I don't know what the right choice is. All right, I'm going to start at the beginning of the search because you will not know.
It's your reading, man.
1/10 of these people. Search. Famous actress ghost continues to haunt local towns. Search. Biographies of actresses in the film Poltergeist plus Dead. Search. Origin of a curse. Search. Baby from famous commercial dies. Search. Deceased actresses under 30. Search. Death certificate for Quentin Dean. Search. YouTube plus Quentin Dean interview. Search. YouTube plus Emily Quartermain, 1995. Search. Amber Tamblyn plus news. Search. Amber Tamblyn plus bad poetry. Search. The worst celebrity poets. Search. IMDb plus best actresses under 30. Search. IMDb plus most underrated actresses over 30. Search. Screen Actors Guild statistics plus how many actresses work past the age of 30. Search. Faye DeWitt plus murder. Search. Iranian actress Asal Badi plus murdered. Search. How to identify human poisoning plus homicide. Search. Brittany Murphy autopsy plus hair sample test. Search. How many hairs are on the human head? Search. Britney Spears shaves head. Search. Rotten Tomatoes plus Crossroads movie. Search. Different spellings for the name Brittany. Search. Origin of the name Brittany. Search. Other British namesakes. Search. Gene Seberg. Search. Self-induced drug poisoning. Search. Difference between Demerol and Percocet. Search. Order Percocet online. Search. How to clear your search history. Search. Whitney Houston plus drug overdose. Search. Rotten Tomatoes plus The Bodyguard movie. Search. Statistics on premature obituaries. Search. Whitney Houston false drug overdose obit after 9/11. Search. Actress killed after World Trade Tower. Search. Actresses who died in planes. Search. Pop singer Aaliyah. Search Rotten Tomatoes plus Romeo Must Die movie. Search Rotten Tomatoes plus Amber Tamblyn movies. Search unknown actresses and actors of vaudeville. Search Eddie Tamblyn plus brain tumor. Search unknown actress deaths. Search National Archives plus actresses deceased. Search Manjula died age 35. Greta Bali died age 34. Lillian Velez, 24. Liliana Lozano, 30. Clarina Seymour, 21. Adriana Prieto, 24. Shaba, 17. Inger Stevens, 35. Billy Carlson, 22. Lee Tobler, 31. Marilyn Miller, 37. Rebecca Schaefer, 21. Dominic Dunn, 22.
It just keeps going from page to page. And once you get to the names, it's honestly, it's great before the names, but then the names, it's just like a crazy documentation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My name's in there. With no name next to it.
With no date, you mean?
Yep. Just, no number.
Yeah, no number.
Good times, guys. Good times.
And then I know that it kind of messed you up writing about these women.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I think anybody in any field studying your dead peers is going to fuck with you. And again, especially studying anyone that is that empathy is what you do for a living, that getting into the human psyche and the human emotions of other people and interpreting that for a living, it's very, very delicate. That's the fucking weird thing about acting is that you do, if you're doing the good stuff, if you are lucky, if you are one of the lucky few to get to do the good work, the things that change people's lives or make them feel a certain way, not just as doing something for money. It's a really incredible responsibility to do that, and at the same time, the delicate and emotional and vulnerability that it takes to get into something like that is the opposite of what you are perceived in a public arena, which is just as a strong, beautiful, expected to be, looking a certain way, feeling a certain way. There's no problems. Everything's great. So it's really kind of a paradox in that way.
So you're supposed to be super sensitive to do the job, and yet you're supposed to be like this rock in public.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's what publicists are for too. They get you great work and they get you interviews, and they're sort of the first ones to, there's been a lot of these interviews. I remember the first one that I did, and my publicist said to me when I was talking about the year that I took off from doing the book took 6 years to write, and I talked about experimenting a lot with drugs and heavily drinking to an excessive point, and I spoke, I was scared to talk about it because I know how things get taken out of context, and sure enough, it was mildly taken out of context. But there was my publicists were the first ones to call me and go, we were listening into that, and should we have them, not put that in the article? And that's very common, very, very common.
And what'd you do? Did you let them put it in the article?
Oh yeah, I said that's important. That's the truth.
You've talked publicly about being an object as your job. I read one thing where you said you told a reporter after interviews you go cry, and you said, it's not you that made me cry, it's the way in which people communicate with quote unquote celebrities as opposed to just communicating like a normal fucking person. How do people communicate with celebrities usually? That's not the way they communicate with a person.
that was such an interesting, that person, I think, if that's the same interview, asked me the question, and it's not their fault, right? Like, they ask you the questions because they're bored with talking to celebrities, and I don't blame them. So they ask the questions that they're assigned to ask. They don't know a different way to approach subjects or to just have a conversation in the way that you and I are having right now. Right? Or even if I was having it with anybody else, that it would just be a conversation. And I get it. I'm not.
So what sort of things? Like, for example, I'll tell you one that happened to me, and I feel like I'm not even the kind of star that this should even happen to. Is I was on Charlie Rose promoting something, and Charlie Rose said to me, like, "What is Ira Glass? What's Ira Glass going to be doing in 5 years?" And I felt like saying, "Dude, I'm right here. Like, you're talking to me.
Yeah.
Like, we're sitting in the same room." And it was such a weird. You know, I like Charlie Rose and all, but it was just sort of like, I just felt like we have the same job. We interview people. Like, what are you talking about me in the third person? I'm right here. You know what I mean? And it was like, you know,
that's pretty amazing. Yeah.
And I recognized it as something like, oh, I guess that's what you do on TV. That's like a thing.
The thing for me is always about pictures, you know, and this book really helped me come to grips with what taking a picture feels like, which is a form of objectification. It's a form of feeling like a fucking zoo animal. And this is not me saying, like, oh my God, please respect my privacy. Like, I don't want you to take a photo. I just want you to fucking talk to me first. Tell me your name. And if you're nervous, say you're nervous. That's great. Me too. That's how we go through life. Everyone's terrified. If you're not, you're full of shit. Like, in whatever capacity. So for me, it was like, you know, I was finding, and that interviewer caught me at a time, I just came back from, this book came out April 7th. I've been in a different city every single night since April 7th up until day before yesterday. And every experience has been very different. And
what did they ask you? What did they say to you? Like, what was the weird thing that they said?
Well, the thing...
Or what was the attitude that was weird?
Nothing other than the things that were weird or that upset me, where when people would, you know, I would say on stage, like, I would talk about this book, and I would talk about the nature of delving into being a product and a object, as I've said, since I was a child, and what that means to me, and the difficulty of trying to explain how that makes me feel on stage, and talking about wanting to end. I mean, I talk about being the war I want to end, and I share emails that I sent to my father and friends of, you know, all kinds of crazy thoughts I had been having while researching death, to like, let me read half an hour of this, and then to come up to me afterwards and say nothing about it. Nothing other than, my God, my mom loves you from General Hospital. I grew up watching you on that show. Can I have your picture? To me, is like a kind of rudeness that goes beyond nervousness. It's just, to me, it's exactly what celebrityism is which is like, I actually just don't see you as a human. You actually, as a person, don't exist. You know, and I am the happiest. I will take a picture with anybody. I've never had a problem with it. I still don't. I love taking photos. It's just like, it's just a sense of like, of that you don't feel like a person. You're made to feel as if you are invisible, and that exists.
But then at the same time, like, I've seen things that you said that, you know, that actually it's your job to not be a regular person too.
Right.
Like, and so of course, like it's not like, in a way, like, you're put in a position where you're not presenting yourself as a regular person.
Right.
And so the fact that people come up to you and they don't treat you like a regular person, they're giving back to you in a way what you're putting out. And so everybody's kind of like in this impossible situation.
I think that's most celebrities. Or people, or actors, or I think that's a lot of people, because they don't feel like they have a choice, and that's fine. This book is an invitation to the funeral of that human being. You know, I feel like it took a lot of soul searching for me to explain what was difficult about feeling the way that I felt, or feeling like an object, or feeling like I wasn't really connecting with, even with fans. Like, I wanted to connect deeper with people that cared about my poems or cared about the work that I did, that it wasn't just about the shallowness that I had felt over so many years. And so I think in expressing that, that particular interviewer too had just sort of said a whole question that was like, you know, so celebrity is the family business. That was like the first thing out of her mouth. And I lost my shit on her. She printed it, and I was happy she printed it. As I said, I find so much offensive about what you just said, and wrong, and ignorant, and stupid. I barely want to continue this with you. And she printed it, and she was like, I'm so sorry, I'm such a big fan, like, I didn't know, and I was like...
Because from your point of view, you just feel like, look, me and my dad, we're just people trying to do a job.
No, but not only that, like, she just doesn't even know what the fuck my dad is, you know? Like,
Right.
you don't know, you know, you read it, you go on Wikipedia for 2 seconds, and I get it. She probably has to, you know, interview, you know, people who are on like the Vampire Diaries all day or something. Like, I don't know who she has to interview or talk to, but it must feel like monotony in the way that celebrity feels like monotony, the way that, you know, working at a grocery store feels like monotony. Like, the monotony of it is part of the cultural problem, I think. And so that there's not a sense of, with their jobs, and certainly with like the Washington Post or the LA Times or things like that, there's not a real sense of you want to create a picture of who the person is, but you don't want to actually do the work to figure out how to get in to the space in which that person exists, which is sometimes really extremely protected, especially in those type of interviews. And that's an exact example why.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the reasons why so many of the women in this book kill themselves and die at these young ages is because, like, I mean, you write about this in the book, like, that they're objectified and there's this disconnect that they're feeling. Like what else is happening? Like, what else? Like, because when you describe it, it's like this weird epidemic, and it's like, and it's so many. It's happening to so many people. It happens to so many people that the feeling that you get reading it is like, oh, it's not like any one of these people is like nuts. It's like, this is a whole kind of experience that's designed to push a certain kind of person in a certain direction, and like. And if you had to say in more prose language that people use when talking, like what is it? Like, what? Because okay, I get that it's weird that people know who you are that you've never met, and I get that a person gets objectified, and that people treat you like you're just some figure when really you're just a person. But what are the other parts of it that, like, I wouldn't necessarily know? Like what else is it? Because it does seem like it's a bunch of forces all at once.
Not sure how to answer that. Are you talking in specific, like, about the poems, or? No,
I'm talking about, like, you sort of, like, you did a kind of crazy documentary research project, right, where you know more about, it's sort of like you did more research and thought more about all these women who died than
right,
maybe anybody, or certainly anybody who I'm going to ever meet.
Right. Okay.
And I'm asking, like, kind of, what did you see in common? You know, like,
right,
and what
right,
did you you know, what did you connect to? What did you see in common between them?
I think that the commonality was, I mean, I don't know. That's hard because they're dead and I can't ask them. And a lot of the book for me was in trying to find my own voice. And so in respecting that, I also at the same time feel like I don't want to try to generalize or to say like what they wanted, you know, because I can't ask them directly. You know, the question that's been asked a billion times is about the Lindsay Lohan poem and like, oh, what does that mean? And people want to read negative things into it.
Well, we should say what it is. Like, if you turn to the page with the Lindsay Lohan poem,
there's no poem, it's just her name. So each title is just the name of the actress, and her poem has no poem. And that's been like the most common question I've been asked is that
are you saying you're next is the question?
Right. The question is, well, I always immediately deflect it and say, well, what do you think it means? That's the very first question I ask every person that's interviewed me or asked. And then they always say, oh, it feels very ominous. It feels like you're saying that, like you're next. When in reality, you know, the book is about suicides. It is about deaths. It's about murders. It's about women who had crazy ex-boyfriends or stalkers. I mean, I'm 31 years old and I have 5 restraining orders. In my lifetime, I've had 5 restraining orders.
On
for real.
Strangers?
Yeah, from absolute strangers. 4 of which were when I was from under the age of 18. That's a reality. If you're a child actor, that's a reality. And so her piece was, while it's a book about all these things, it also is a book about voyeurism and looking, and projection and sort of looking at the lives of other people. And so the blank page was meant to also represent reflecting back to the reader their own opinion, their own feeling about who she is, as opposed to me stating it.
Okay, let's read another poem. Do Untitled Actress.
Okay.
Page 2.
Okay.
This poem's awesome.
Untitled Actress. Submission calls for an actress mid to late 20s. All ethnicities acceptable except Asian American, Caucasian preferable. Must read teen on screen. Thin, but not gaunt, lean. Quirky, but not unattractive, no brown eyes. Not taller than 5'5", weight no more than 109. Actress should have great smile, straight teeth a must. Must be flexible, small bust a plus. Can do own stunts, will waive rights to image, likeness, publicity, final cut. Roll calls for nudity. Roll calls for simulated sexual intercourse. Roll calls for role play with lead male. No stand-in avail. Rolled pays scale. Character is shy, yet codependent, searching for love in all the wrong men. Character confides in others at her own risk. Character is fatigued, hollow, suffers from self-doubt, a sense of worthlessness. Character learns the hard way to believe in herself, no brown eyes. Character finally finds happiness when she meets Brad, a successful older businessman, 5'5". Logline. A woman fights to save her soul. Think a young Carol Lombard meets a younger Anna Nicole. Requires an actress that will leave an audience speechless, who's found her creative voice, not a speaking role.
That's amazing. I was reading that. I was wondering how many of those lines are actual lines that you've read, have been presented to you.
I've actually never read a casting breakdown, but like not anyone here who's not in the business can hear me say that and believe that's true, right? Most of it is. I mean, that's whether or not it's in an actual breakdown or not. That's the reality of the situation.
You have a job that I think so many people dream of having. Was it hard to admit to yourself the ways that you're discontent with it? Is there a feeling of like, well, I should be happy, like things should feel great?
Well, look, I think I have one of the best jobs in the world, and just because the business of the job, of the craft, fucking sucks. It does for most any industry. I don't think that there's anyone that wouldn't feel like they've suffered or exhausted or manipulated or any of those things to do what they love. I think it's very rare. I think that the book and the research of this helped me to adjust and helped me to deal with the parts of the acting business that I did not love. I still love it. It's still my favorite thing in the whole wide world to do. And of everything that I've done, including writing, acting to me is just a true thing that is beyond second nature. It's just...
No, but do you know what I mean? Like if you have a good job, it's hard to... You don't want to seem like an ingrate, and you don't want to feel like an ingrate, and you know what I mean? Like, and you don't want to feel like a whiner, and so it's like writing so publicly about something that's so like, okay, here's some things about this that suck.
Yeah.
Do you feel like my
last editor and publisher who published my second book, who I love, Jennifer Joseph at Manic D Press. I saw her in San Francisco recently, and she's a tough cookie, and she said to me, congratulations on writing this and not making yourself sound like a victim. And I was kind of like taken aback by her saying that, but I understood what she meant, which was just that, which was exactly that it's not a book about poor me. And my friend America and I did a thing recently where she and I sort of spoke about the book, and she said something to me that no one had said before, which was that she didn't feel like, even as an actress, that while reading the book, she said they didn't feel like poems about actresses to her. They just felt like poems about women, which I swear to God, I'd never, and I'm a feminist, and I've, write as one and consider myself one for the most part, and had never really thought about it in that way before. So I don't know. I don't feel. I don't feel like it's shitting on the business of it. Like I don't feel like it's saying I hate acting or I hate any of that. It's just sort of, I think, shedding a light on a side of the business that everyone is protected from constantly. Hopefully, that's what they see.
You said, and I know, like, you started experimenting with the drugs that killed some of the women when you were writing the book, and it's mostly pills. Mm-hmm. Like, what was that like? Like, I've never taken pills. Like, I've done all kinds of other drugs.
I actually tried to get my hands on Seconal. Doesn't exist anymore.
Like, what are pills like?
You've never taken any pills?
No.
Ira?
No, for recreational, no.
Yeah. Extremely numbing and pointless. I mean, I thought that it was going to get me closer to their realities. And what it did is it made me a shitty writer. Like when I tried to write poems about, their existence or their life or whatever the idea it was that I had, it just was numbing. I mean, it feels great because you don't feel anything. And that was the thing that I took away from it, was just the sense of, when you feel for a living, it's really exhausting. Like, it's really exhausting, and it's really hard not to take that into your personal life.
Oh, that's so interesting. And then you just have something that's just like numbs you out.
I mean, some of my closest girlfriends who are actresses and actors as well, it's like, when that's what you do all the time, it's really hard not to feel in that same way in your personal life. And the pills just represented an ending to that. The drugs or the drinking sort of represented a ceasing, a stopping of that sense of overfeeling. But that did not a good writer make at all.
Note to myself.
Yeah.
How about that?
Don't do it. Don't do it.
There's a poem that I feel like sort of gets at the feeling of being on pills. I feel like on page 92, the Martha Mansfield. Do you want to read the first two stanzas of that? Yeah. And maybe we'll stop there and let people get books signed and stuff. Okay.
I'm trying to write your poem, Martha Mansfield, but I can't memorize your lines. You're the last on my list of actresses, the last one owed her ode. Something about a hoop skirt that caught on fire in 1923 and seared an epitaph into our memories. Only no one remembers you, respectfully. No one will remember me either. We're last spring's bird nests. We're the venison at the steak dinner. That's all I got. I'm fresh out of sober soliloquies. No more metaphors. No more similes. Let me search you on Wikipedia, see if I can find some oil for the engine. But before I do, how about another pat on the ass for this glass of comatose that's roofied my throat? Do you think maybe Charles Bukowski once drank this same thing and said that same thing, only without red lipstick? I took a half of a little pill, Martha, I must confess, and now the keyboard's letters are so soft. W-I-K-I. Goes on and on and on and talks about I think that's
it. Yeah, let's stop there. Did writing the book make you want to stop acting?
No, never. It made me fall further in love with it, I think. I think before that I didn't fully understand my place in it. I felt like it was something I was dropped into when I was 11 years old and had no choice about. And now I love it and the process even more because I actually see myself as separate from it. I actually see myself as a person outside of being the actress, which makes me, so much more in love with it, more than I've ever been.
Okay, let's take 2 questions from the audience and then you'll sign books. Okay.
Sweet.
Does anybody have a question? Yes.
I'm going to bring
Excellent
you the
timing there.
Okay. Okay, thanks. You talked about monotony in every industry, which I can attest to as a barista, which I find really interesting coming from somebody.
Probably misogyny too, right?
Oh, tons of it. Lots of it, yes. How do you combat monotony in your own life? I assume writing, but how do you combat that?
Truly, without it sounding cliche, but I do the things that terrify me the most. Things that scare me are constantly usually the things that are totally right for me. The more they scare me, the more they're right for me. That's sort of what I've learned over the years.
Okay, second question. You are the final question, sir. It's all on you. Yes.
Just a moment.
Oh my God. Joseph.
Oh, you know this guy?
Yeah, it's one of my goddads. What's up, Joseph?
We've met. Hi, Amber. Nice piece of work.
Thanks.
Really. You have Jane Mansfield and Marilyn Monroe, and you have Sharon Tate. And then you have, those are sort of my generation. And then you have other folks who met terrible demises also. And given the view of perception of feminism for the three prior that I mentioned, Marilyn and Jane and Sharon Tate, what did they have in common, anything, with those who were in demise lately in your book?
Oh, geez.
Call me doctor.
Thank you. That's a great question. I mean, I can't speak to those three in specific unless there's something you know, unless you're setting me up for an answer that you know. I feel like I feel like those three women in specific were sexual icons, and so their sense of identity was not, and they may not have known how to get beyond that. I mean, there's, and that was an era too in which there was just there was no difference. There was no celebrity without itself. So those women were sexual icons, and they may have wanted to get out from underneath that, but they may have never known how to, which I think might be a commonality with all the women that came after them, which was just a sense of, I am this thing to many, many people. I have no idea how to change that. And then also lying to yourself and saying like, no, I'm good with this. I'm good with this reality. This is fine. I'm privileged. I should be good with this reality. I'm good with this reality. America?
I'll just talk loudly. Sorry, I didn't even shout at the last time. I read the book 3 times.
Oh, did you?
I did. At the end of the poem about yourself, you say the author died in the making.
Oh, yeah. You would bring this up.
How did writing the book, or did writing the book change your understanding of dying and death, and how you see it and how you see it for yourself?
Yeah, the first piece in the epilogue is called True or False, and it's a collection of terms that I have seen myself over the years, which is a flake, which is someone who can't be counted on, which is my mother's employer, many tough things that were to write, and then they're all sort of crossed out until you get to the very end when it says, I think like the second to last thing is like fake Emma Stone, the author, died during the writing of this book. I said earlier too that this felt like a invitation to a funeral, and I believe that that's true. And in the sense of dying and letting things of yourself, like really honoring the grieving process of who you used to be, is really important, and not something that we're necessarily taught, especially in American culture, to believe that huge parts of us die, and they're literally very dead. We don't die, but the parts of us do, and to grieve over that, and to be scared that they're dying, and to want to save them, and to want to protect, and to want to have them continue on because that's your part of your identity and your id. But to me, the death, and certainly in exploring it in that poem, was really about not a literal death, but staving myself off from a creative death and finding a way to find a sort of creative rebirth, ultimately. And that was the ultimate sort of feeling that I got out of everything, or the thing that I learned out of everything, was that that rebirth is possible continuously, and it will be for as long as I live.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you very much.
On behalf of this Strand, thank you so
much,
Amber and Ira, for joining us tonight.